Hi there, welcome to Bible/Chat. Gus, hi.
Hi.
One of my favorite things to do on these is to start the video and not talk about what we're going to talk about. So
Yeah, now this is what we call
fun.
fun.
So we did one before on boycotting and Target, for example, and boycotting certain brands because of what they stand for or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we talked about where there is a line where it crosses, where you can't do it. And then that kind of brought up another question, so I'll let you...
Yeah, so the question was about, like, you lived in a culture where idols were everywhere, even though we would say the idols are everywhere here too, right? But
more overt.
More visible.
More overt, yeah.
So what do you do when I remember you told a story about someone coming and giving you food that was sacrificed to idols, in a sense, right?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
So what do you do when you're living when you're in India?
Yeah.
And what would the church do?
Yeah. So this is where again, we want to be very cautious because, we love our Indian brothers and sisters in Christ, and we love the Indian people at large. And idolatry is everywhere, like you said. So we can have the same thing in our country, but in different forms. But in Hindu culture and in Sikh culture, there are idols, and they're visible, and there are things that are offered to the idol. In Hindi, the word prasad means food that's been offered to the idol first, from food that's offered to the gods. And we did have a neighbor who was very gracious to us. She would bring us food every day. When we first moved there, we didn't know what it was. She was just helping us out. And they had made food, and they had given it to their gods, and then they would bring it up to us and feed it and serve us. And it was delicious, and we would eat it. We loved it. We were thinking, man, this is fantastic. Like, this is great. And every day she would say, this is prasad. And I thought, I didn't know what that was, so I'm like, oh, okay, this is prasad. And then she'd bring a different dish, and she's like, this is prasad. And I'm like, apparently prasad is like very complex dish because it's coming out in totally different ways. I knew no Hindi. And then I was asking the guys that were there who were believers, and they're like, oh, actually that means it's been offered to the gods. And so I had to actually ask her. When she brought it the next time, I said, hey, come on in, thank you so much for serving us. We can't take it anymore. Here's the deal. And just explain to her that their idols were actually not real. The real God. The real God can't be seen. He's not contained in idols. He's the God who made heaven and earth, and just got to share the gospel with her. And so that the goal there is not to offend her, and we can say thank you for her service to us. She's doing it with, I think, good intentions in that sense. But because she doesn't know Christ and she's not a true believer, there's a root there that's a little bit broken. We still have a great relationship with their family, very dear. It didn't hurt the relationship, but it was just an opportunity to share the gospel. But that I think it actually gets to a root issue with this stuff too. And the reason why Paul says don't accept it if they tell you what it is. And that's because someone who doesn't truly know Christ, they're doing those things with a desire for self-atonement, self-righteousness. So because she doesn't know God, she's offering food to these false gods, and she's doing it as an appeal for essentially forgiveness for her. She's trying to find a way to worship her gods, and so that they'll bless her, either by forgiving her sins or by giving her the things that she wants. The same is true of people even now, right? People that do things for certain causes, philanthropic causes, that's actually just a form of virtue signaling, right? Like, I'm doing this, but look at me, I'm a good person. I'm supporting these causes. I'm supporting this thing. And so it's just actually a way to sort of put your virtue on display. And again, that's the reason why Paul says don't take it. When someone wants to put their virtue on display about something that is false, a false god or a false cause, a cause that is anti-God, both those things are actually evil. And Paul says don't allow them to do that for their sakes, not for your sake. It's not real. That stuff's evil. It's you're not like confused, like, oh, I wonder if that's an okay cause to support. It's not for your sake, it's for their sake. Because they're trying to attach virtue to evil. And we want to help them to separate virtue from evil in the same way that we want to help people to separate virtue from false gods, false deities that aren't real, for their sakes, for the sake of their soul. And so we want to help individuals. When it comes to boycotting, again, you have freedom, right? Unless the individual who you're communicating with tells you, or the store directly tells you, the proceeds from this will support this activity. Don't worry about it. What they do with the money behind that purchase wall, they have freedom with, and that they'll stand before God for. And what you do with the product on the other side of the purchase wall, you will stand before God for. So use your shampoo. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I wonder, like, when sharing that story about India and in our situation here, there's a lot of I don't want to call it fake news, but there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
People would tell you things. Well, 30% of this goes to the Satan's church. I remember
whatever. Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s, and that was a big thing, right?
The
Satanic church, and you can't use Head and Shoulders or whatever it was. Remember, it was one of those things. So
I was
growing up with dandruff, and
there was a big push with Starbucks at that.
Yeah,
remember
Starbucks,
years ago, years and years ago, that was a big push to boycott Starbucks.
And so obviously there's a ton of misinformation. So how do we navigate through that?
Yeah, and this is where it's actually like, I think it's like almost
don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, I think it's honestly like, so why do these companies do this stuff? I mean, maybe 1% of the time the company is doing it because they actually care about that cause. They're doing it because for the same reason that anybody does it. They're doing it because it makes money. They're trying to make
tax write-offs.
It's tax write-offs, and they're trying to make money. So they look at something and they're like, hey, generally, what is the populace pro on? Give to that thing that generally the culture is for. They don't. I mean, those companies don't care. That's why Target's having such a hard time, right? They're like, we'll put it forward. Okay, we'll put it in the back of the store. Oh, everyone's upset. Oh, we'll put it in the middle of the store. They don't know where to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Same with the Dodgers, right? Invite, uninvite, invite. We're in trouble. Like, what do we do? People are upset. They're just trying to keep the peace and trying to find ways to write off some profits and essentially make people more desirous to come to their games, shop in their stores, buy their product. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
So when it comes to these things, it doesn't matter ultimately what's the root issue in the hearts of the people that are doing those things. Whether they're doing it just for money, or whether they're doing it because they actually believe in it. Yeah. That's where that whole wall of transaction is so helpful. Yeah. Once you go through the register, what happens with that money behind the register is up to them. Yeah, and you don't have to worry about it. If they give it to something, that's fine. Almost every company in America has company over 100 employees has some way that they're participating in some of this stuff. Yeah. And we cannot police all that. It's impossible. And God knows that. That's why Paul says that about the meat market. You can't go to every single meat vendor and say, which idol do you worship? How often? Thursdays? Okay, I'll shop for meat on Fridays. You can't. You die trying to keep up with all that. And the truth is, it doesn't matter because the earth is the Lord's and all it contains. Yeah. Who makes shampoo? Yeah. I mean, companies do, but ultimately God does, right? Yeah. So it's God's, and if you give thanks for it, your conscience is clear. Don't worry about it. It's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that very, very helpful. Really.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that's helpful for you. If you have any questions on this topic or any topic, feel free to email us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much.